My name's Anselm Hook. I work with Mozilla Research. I've been in the AR space for maybe 10 years now. Started off at Xerox PARC, was really kind of all in for the last decade. Worked at Deco, which is a company whose later work you may now see in the form of 6D.ai. They're doing some amazing work, 3D reconstruction and tracking. I would say that my interests are, although my day-to-day is kind of hands-on technical, the reason I do that is I'm interested in a broader goal. What I'm really interested in is an idea of helping people see better, and I'll talk a little bit more about that vision. So, what I would like to do is, I would like to play a small game. This is going to be a choose-your-own-adventure. and this is a trick question. You wake up in the morning, it's 2023, and you're groggy, but you're kind of getting excited because it's the new day, you're going to do stuff. You reach over, and what are you grabbing, right? What's the device you're grabbing? You have a choice. You can grab some open web-enabled AR glasses, which are, they're pretty good. Or you can grab the really great SuperSenses CyberGlasses with AAA content, right? So, I'll take a call from the audience. Which direction should we go in first?
AAA.
What's that? You want AAA? Okay. Well, I would have picked AAA anyway because it's the next slide, so it's easier for me. Okay. Wow, you picked the SuperSenses CyberGlasses. That's amazing. Colin touched on a lot of these themes. What's happening is that we're about to take the web as it exists and port it to this directly, literally on your face experience that's going to be very intimate, very close to us. And without thought, a lot of those tensions we have with the web right now are going to basically they're going to get a bit too close. The things like ads, the things like, I don't know, anything funny and amusing. So you wake up in this morning and you're trying to find food and you're surrounded by ads, but wait a second, you see a crypto kitty, so you collect it and you're all happy. But then there's someone who's making fun of the president, so you have to talk to them for a bit. And well, at this point in the game, you're not having a great day, right? You're still hungry, you're kind of distracted, and you're kind of a little bit bummed, right? You've been kind of having these experiences that aren't really very meaningful. This speaks to the Keiichi Matsuda's hyper reality, which Colin mentioned, which is a must-see. It really is a great bit of humor, talking about this kind of connection of that traditional space to the new space. And I want to drill down a little bit on this narrative, just a little bit more depth. What we're seeing, of course, is the idea of walled gardens, which it's not exactly clear why that's bad. Not only is it divisive, but there's a quality of walled gardens which is a kind of soft censorship that limits the kind of authenticity of voice. And there's another quality of these ecosystems, which is that they tend to be based more on advertising. And what happens in an advertising-based model is it's a kind of dishonest relationship between the creator and the consumer. The creator is beholden to the advertiser, so they're not really acting in your best interest. And so everything is kind of lensed through their need to get paid. And those kinds of incentives undermine an honest relationship between parties. Other things that tend to happen when you have walled gardens is that the barriers to entry are higher. To produce high quality content, to get visibility, there's this kind of you can use tools like Unity 3D and such like, but those become more and more barriers for the novices to participate in. And you end up having a kind of read-only internet where you're kind of clearly a consumer. And we see that today with the traditional web, where we're kind of consuming a lot. Most of us are consumers, and not as many of us are creators. And it's different from the early web. There's a real shift. Another thing that we're seeing, which I'll touch on later, is that there's an idea of trust that we used to have in small towns or in communities. And right now, that sense of trust exists, but it's privatized. So Airbnb and Lyft are brokers for trust, in a sense. You trust that you can rent your house out to a stranger and that it won't be destroyed, or if it is destroyed, that you'll be compensated. And it's a great business, and these are great ideas, but there's a possibility we could do better. And also, one last point is that I think a lot of our behavior on the web is a little bit self-soothing. We'll get on the net, and we'll kind of get into this cycle where we're surfing or posting, and then there's some kind of an anxiety production, and we go back into this cycle of, it's almost like a permanent cigarette break, where we're having a cigarette break, then getting back to having a cigarette break. It's kind of a weird thing, and you'll notice it. I think we've all seen that. I'm not saying these are only faults of that system, but I notice that they're qualities of the traditional web. And it's worth noting that this future is coming sooner than we might think. We see hints, strong hints, that people are pursuing this aggressively behind the scenes. And they're just doing it because we want it, right? The companies are trying to cater to our needs, but we could take a stronger stance. So in this storyline, this future, it's not a great game. It's not a lot of fun. So let's start over. Okay, here we are. Okay, now we have a choice of futures. You wake up in the morning and you reach for, obviously, your open web enabled AR glasses. Maybe they're a bit clunky, maybe they're not as awesome, but we like to imagine that there's another possibility here. So, going down this path, well, I like to imagine this path is sunnier. Casually speaking, I see a possibility for relationships where you can have a stronger voice, where it's not just AAA content, but where you can create your own forums and your own spaces, and not just between your friends, but between friends of friends, kind of a broader network of connectivity. I like to imagine a space where money isn't an overriding force, where it's not fully dominant, where you can find opportunities that are enriching in other ways, where it's not just a dollar score at the bottom. I like to imagine that with better payment systems, you could get rewards just for going to places and be incentivized to participate casually in a way that we don't really do right now. Like, we have incentives like you can get a Pokemon if you go here, but I like to imagine real cash outs. And I also like to imagine a future where trust is public and where everything can be marked up as this emitter has at least some trust. At least 50 of your friends have said that this person is likely to even exist, or likely to have some sort of opinion on this topic that's at least plausibly credible. Right? I'm not looking for a lot of trust, but I'm looking for tools and systems to let us get away from what we have right now. And I'm going to drill down that in a little bit more detail from this kind of soft picture and try and walk through what I think are the parts of this picture. And some of these overlap with Colin's points, so I'll try and point some of those out. The first thing, of course, oddly enough working for a browser company, is, well, look, at the end of the day, everything is a browser. All apps are browsers. All apps collect some content, they produce a view based on that, usually declarative grammar, usually a security system, there's caching, and once you have all that structure, user account management, once you have all that structure, what you've done is you've written a browser. And, well, there is the browser. There are open source browsers based on standards. There's Chrome and other solutions. And what they really are is a collection of best practices that have been vetted by thousands, if not millions of people. And there's some argument that many of the services we want to produce and share don't need to be a Unity native, AAA-based, high-quality experience. I'm not saying the web is not as good as that, but you can iterate fast, build that experience on top of a very rich, solid, thoroughly tested foundation. So when I think about a future AR web and where I want to go, as opposed to the current web, I want to see more of a kind of pendulum swing back, away from the walled gardens and native apps, back to the web with really rich, really great apps that have amazing user experience and that are really satisfying. And I think that the browser is the right way to do that. And there's so many small reasons why that's the case. I'll illuminate one other reason I really like, which is that we know that AR hardware is coming. We know that 3D reconstruction and tracking, persistence, the point cloud generation, it's all coming. It's going to be in the hardware. And inevitably, browsers end up supporting hardware features. There's GPS, came out on the iPhone earlier, and then it started to be supported in the browser eventually. So it's really a question of how the browsers or how an open framework is going to support this kind of tech. But I'm going to move on from the browser and talk a little bit more, a couple of other pieces. speaking again to Colin, but kind of just a generalization, is that we need some kind of DNS, guys. You have to hurry up and build this for us, because we need some way of getting all this content down. Someone's going to solve this, it's not going to be me. Right, so I put not totally clear how this is going to happen yet. On that one point, the security and privacy issues, again, when you talk about revealing the point cloud of your bedroom to everybody on the net, it doesn't sound that dangerous, but imagine if you're in Iran and you're in some subculture group that's not the main orthodoxy. You could be injured. You could be put in harm's way for your own private behavior. So it's really important that we get this right, not just because we're here and in this particular economy and democracy, but around the world, to empower people to speak who otherwise will simply not participate. If we want all those stakeholders to join us in these conversations, people who understand the world from different points of view, we have to make it safe for them. Here's a point that hasn't been touched on very well. I think what was missing when the original net was designed was a sense of money. We didn't have, it's an academic community, they didn't really have to think about money. So you have weird things like denial of service attacks, where you have a bunch of people trying to connect to a server, or one guy with a bunch of robots, and then that server goes down and that company's out of business. What it should be more like is that every connection request should give a small amount of money to that company. Like, where you have like some sort of digital currency right in the protocol layer. And a denial of service attack should be a giant revenue moment for a game company. Like, we can flip these narratives and start to incorporate a kind of calories or energy into the fabric. I'll give you one example. If you think about a bird in the jungle, it takes an energetic, if it does a bird call, it takes energy for that bird to make that call. And rarely or less often are birds going to make false signals. You're not going to often signal that there's a predator or such like, because there's an energetic cost to making that signal. Today we live in a landscape where it's very easy to spam people and make fake signals. And so we're surrounded by all these fake signals. It's very hard to see the truth from the fiction. And if there's some kind of energy cost woven into the fabric, we can start to do things like disambiguate truth from falsehood by having people pay a small amount of money to make a request in public. Like, let's say I want a slice of pizza, and I put up, $1, and I'll say, hey, if someone can deliver me a slice of pizza, you get this reward plus another $9. So we could do things like reverse search, where you could just say you wanted something, and then people would come and bid on you rather than you having to search outwards. Like, there's a lot of knock-on effects from fixing money in the network. Another thing that I think would happen is that I think there would be an incredible blooming of creativity if we tried this really novel idea of actually just paying people for stuff that we like. It's a crazy idea, you could try it. I think I did actually end up kind of diving on trust a little bit, but I think another piece of fabric, and kind of these new anchors for a new network, are some way of some kind of mild disambiguation of people. It doesn't have to be super great. And I think of it in terms of emitters and receivers. Things that emit noise, like a media outlet, like Washington Post, they start to accrue a score. And maybe a Twitter handle starts to accrue a score. And that score is based on, oh yes, I believe this person actually exists. This person is saying good things. And there's a network traversal effect where, I'm here at the other end of a network, and there might be 7 hops to this emitter. You can actually start to kind of score this casual network, and there's lots of very well-defined computer algorithms for doing some evaluation on a network graph, and at least doing at least a little bit of spam filtering. It shouldn't be so easy for Russian bots to infiltrate our news media networks. And I don't even have a lot of sympathy for Americans who are falling prey to this, because we need better infrastructure. You can't really just blame other people forever for our incredible gullibility, right? We need to bring some rigor to the table, at least a little bit. And I believe it's another kind of pillar of a next generation net. And lastly, the last point is, and speaking to what Torch 3D is doing, we need lightweight authoring of some kind so that people can easily compose. Unity 3D, tools like this, I keep picking on them. It's great, but we need an utterly lightweight, playful, delightfully simple way to just make stuff and share it. I can give you one example. I've been doing a series of use case studies for augmented reality. And one of the use cases that kept coming up was some kind of lightweight tutorial. You can imagine a volunteer firefighter being at the firehouse, and they would hold their phone and they would see a little tutorial that someone else who had just trained had built on how to operate a piece of equipment. So you should be able to come up to it, build that tutorial really easily, and then come up to it and consume it at the same time. It should be just as easy as drawing on stuff. It should be really simple, maybe not super powerful, but we need to work on that because that's not something we get for free. Many of the other things we're talking about are kind of happening, but this takes a little bit more focus and energy and a bit of will to make that happen. And I think in this scenario, this is a win scenario in my mind. We add some more pillars, we fix some things up, and we have a really great internet. It's a really awesome experience, you know. And then I think kind of neat things become possible. Things we hadn't. You know, it's this kind of cyber vision world or cyber future, and I think some of those things fall out of expectations that are not completely trivial. So I'll just roll through a couple of expectations before I close, or rather, possible outcomes. In my mind, there's a possibility of, my favorite word I really love is called placemaking, and it's a whole thesis of thought around it, which is that as you're walking around in the city, you're not just responding to these concrete buildings and seeing them and kind of being, you know, it's there, it's always been there, that's just the way the world is, but you're seeing a world as it could be. I was with my friend on top of the, Howard Silverman on top of the EcoTrust building. He points down at the park and he says, you see that park and you see those kids playing on this water fountain, this water feature? He says, well, if you remove that water fountain and you remove the water feature and the concrete, underneath all that there's a culvert. And in that culvert is a river. And you could just remove all this and just have a river, and the kids could just play in a river. And I was like, oh my God, what have we done? You know? Like, seeing the possibility of how it could be for me was really powerful. And then the idea of making places, seeing, you know, that we have a collective agency to see a world that doesn't actually exist, but could exist, I really like that narrative a lot. Another thing I'm very fond of is kind of like a digital angel or just-in-time problem solving. You have a flat and someone magically comes and helps you. Or, the pizza problem, which I call the pizza problem. You want a slice of pizza, why do I have to do the search for the pizza? Like, why is the burden on me? I have the money, just bring me the pizza. You know? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And then the reverse search again is a variation of that kind of thing, where you should be able to signal outwards. And this is based on kind of all the pillars, you know, trust and geolocation and so many other factors. And I think the last point I want to make is, what I'm really interested in is I kind of just want to help us see better, like see each other, see the world as it could be, kind of have a little bit of rigor in our vision. Because I think that many of us don't see each other. We see kind of fake narratives, or we see things that are maybe idealized. We're finding idealized monsters that aren't really we'll. And I would like us to ground our vision with all the stakeholders in our communities and then go and argue. Like, we're going to argue as humans, but I want us to at least argue about some common reality that possibly could be real. And that's it. Thank you.